From its humble beginnings to the modern era, we take you back to the birthplace of the Olympic Games, ancient Greece. Sunlight pours down on a sacred valley in ancient Greece. The air is warm, thick with the scent of olive trees and dust. In the distance, a colossal statue of Zeus gleams, its ivory and gold visible for miles around. The sound of distant chattering and the shuffle of feet can be heard. It is here in this hallowed ground that the ancient Olympic Games first took root. But these games were not about medals or global competition. They were about something far deeper, a spiritual connection to the divine. Before the roar of the crowd, before the glory of the victor, there was only the sacred. The ancient Olympic Games were not born from a love of sport, but from a profound devotion to the gods. In the heart of the Peloponnese, nestled between rolling hills and olive groves, lay the sanctuary of Olympia, home to the most important religious festival in the ancient Greek world. Here, amidst the towering columns of the temple of Zeus, where the air was heavy with incense and the whispers of prayer, a small group stood in silent anticipation. Leading them was a high priest, robed in white linen, his face etched with the solemnity of his calling. Behind him stood a group of athletes, their bodies taut with discipline, their eyes focused with unwavering determination. Each man was a representative of his city-state, united not by rivalry or conquest, but by a common goal to honor Zeus, the king of the gods. For the ancient Greeks, the Olympic Games were more than just a sporting event. They were a religious festival, a grand offering to the gods. To them, sport was a form of worship. Every swing of a hammer, every thrust of a spear, every stride on a racetrack was a prayer to the heavens. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the temple in golden light, the high priest raised his hands in a solemn invocation, calling upon Zeus to accept their homage. The athletes responded with a mighty shout, their voices echoing with the fervor of their devotion. With the blessing of Zeus invoked, the games commenced. Imagine the scene. You are standing in ancient Olympia. The year is 776 BC. Around you, the air buzzes with anticipation. The scene before you is both simple and powerful. In the center of it all is a long dirt track. No grandstands, no elaborate timekeeping devices, just the hard-packed earth and a handful of spectators scattered along the sidelines. At one end, two young men clad in simple loincloths stand poised and ready. The starter, an elderly gentleman with a staff, raises his hand high above his head. Then in a flash, he drops it, releasing a small marble ball. The sharp crack of the starter's signal echoes across the valley. In an instant, the two athletes explode forward, a blur of muscle and grit, their feet barely grazing the ground as they sprint the length of the track. The crowd erupts into cheers, their voices rising and falling with each stride. The race is long and arduous, testing not just their speed, but their endurance, their mental fortitude. The lead changes hands several times, each runner summoning every ounce of strength to stay ahead, but only one can win. And so it was in 776 BC, the very first recorded Olympic Games. The spectacle was stripped to its purest form, a single foot race, the stadion, the length of the track, no frills, no fanfare, just the raw display of human potential. This was the humble beginning of the Olympic Games, a far cry from the colossal event it would become. But within this simplicity lay the seeds of what was to come. As the crowds dispersed and the victors celebrated, a new energy began to stir at Olympia. The idea of a single foot race expanded into a series of contests, pushing the boundaries of human achievement. In the years that followed, the program grew to include wrestling, an event that demanded not just physical prowess, but also strategy and technique. Then came boxing, a brutal yet captivating display of strength and willpower. The chariot races arrived, thundering into the sacred valley like a tempest, shaking the very foundations of the stands with the might of their steeds. Among these, the most comprehensive test of athleticism was the pentathlon, a 5-event competition that combined running, jumping, discus, and javelin throwing and wrestling. It was the ultimate challenge, a true test of the all-around athlete. Over the centuries, the Games evolved into a week-long festival, drawing athletes and spectators from all over the known world. Chariots rumbled through mountain passes and along winding coastal roads, carrying not just athletes, but also merchants, entertainers and pilgrims eager to witness this spectacle of athleticism and piety. The climax of the Games was always the same, a solemn procession to the temple of Zeus, where the athletes presented their wreaths of olive, their symbol of victory. This was a moment of unity, a reminder that despite their differences, all were united in their admiration for the gods. The Olympic Stadium, originally modest, soon expanded, growing to accommodate tens of thousands of spectators. It became a sea of humanity, a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds, all united in their appreciation for the unfolding drama. Among them were philosophers like the Stoic Zeno, who found inspiration in the pursuit of excellence. He saw in the athletes a dedication to self-improvement, a striving for perfection that transcended mere competition. Rulers like the Roman Emperor Hadrian, who used the Games to showcase the might of his empire, a grand stage for a spectacle that glorified not just the athletes, but Rome itself. And ordinary citizens, mothers, fathers, children, all drawn to the infectious enthusiasm, the spectacle of it all, the thrill of the races, the suspense of the wrestling matches, the artistry of the boxers. These Games weren't just about athletic prowess. They were a celebration of the human spirit, a testament to what the body and mind could achieve. At the height of the Games, the stadium would fall silent. All eyes would turn to the heavens. A hush would fall over the crowd, as if in reverence to the gods. For in this moment, it was not just athletes who were on display, but the very essence of the human condition. In the dusty arena and the echoing stands, the ideals of ancient Greece, the pursuit of excellence, the love of competition, the respect for the divine, all found their embodiment. Then, just as abruptly as it began, the frenzy would subside. The crowds would thin, the stalls would pack up, and the athletes would depart, each carrying with him the memories of a contest that had pushed him to his limits. Back to the humble beginnings, the sanctity of the original Games was never forgotten. Despite the grandeur that had grown around it, the Olympic Games remained fundamentally a religious festival, a tribute to Zeus, a gesture of goodwill among the city-states, and above all, a celebration of the human spirit. And so the tradition continued, from the days of the Roman Empire through the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. The Olympic ideal endured, passed down through stories and myths, waiting for the day it would rise again. When the modern Olympic Games were conceived in the 19th century, they were inspired by the ancient ideal, a revival of the original concept, a return to the roots of sportsmanship and international harmony. Today, when you hear the Olympic anthem or see the Olympic flame, remember that behind this spectacle of modern times lies the spirit of ancient Olympia. It's a story of human endeavor, religious devotion, and the timeless pursuit of excellence. Greek and Roman history is filled with wars, conquests, and battles. But once in a while, there would be moments when two warring parties would agree to lay down their arms and come together peacefully. One of the most famous examples of this was the ancient Olympics. So let's talk about them. The Olympics weren't just some random celebration. They were the biggest athletic festival in the Greek-speaking world. And because they were held in a sanctuary of the supreme god Zeus himself, everyone had to respect it. We're going to start by looking at how the Olympics came into being, then go over what happened at them. And if you like what we do, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. To understand the importance of the Olympics, we have to begin with a sacred truce. Ancient Greece wasn't just one unified empire or even a single city-state. It was made up of many independent political entities called city-states. Some of the larger ones were Sparta, Athens, Thebes, and Corinth, while some smaller ones included Melos, Chios, and Euboea. Because these states were so independent, it was not uncommon for them to be at war with each other. Travel between them could be dangerous, and getting somewhere far away required careful planning and an experienced guide. For example, traveling from Athens to Olympia, where the Olympic Games were held, would require a journey through hostile Spartan territory. This is why a sacred truce, or ekechariah, had to be established to allow people from all over the Greek-speaking world to travel safely to Olympia every 5 years. The truce lasted for 6 months, starting in the month of Messidor in the year before the Games were held. During this time, no hostilities were allowed. Any wars that were ongoing had to be paused, and ambassadors could freely travel to and from the Games. This peace treaty was very important and had severe consequences if violated. The first recorded instance of a city breaking the truce was in 720 BC, when the Spartans invaded the island of Melos. As punishment, the Oracle of Delphi forbade them from participating in the Olympics for 30 years. Even though they were only forbidden from competing, the Spartans chose not to participate in the Games at all until the ban was lifted. The exact origins of the Olympics are steeped in myth and legend. There are many stories passed down to us from antiquity that try to explain how it started, but we don't know which, if any, might be true. By far, the most common myth attributes the founding of the Games to the hero Heracles. According to Pseudo-Apollodorus's library, Heracles wanted to honor his father Zeus and decided to hold an athletic festival in his honor. He invited all the Greeks to participate and divided the competitors into teams representing different regions. After the Games ended, he gave the victors wreaths woven from wild olive branches. These wreaths would later become the Olympic medals of the ancient world. This myth clearly explains why the Olympics were held in Olympia, a sanctuary of Zeus, and why wreaths were given to the winners. However, as with most Greek myths, the story isn't finished here. In another version, Heracles doesn't establish the Games himself, but rather participates in them. In this story, he competes against the giant Alcyoneus in wrestling and wins, earning him a crown of wild olives. But even this version is likely just a localized explanation of the Olympics and doesn't take into account the wider pan-Hellenic character of the festival. Unfortunately, there are no surviving historical records that tell us exactly when the Games began. But according to tradition, the first Olympics were held in the year 776 BC and continued annually thereafter. While the Olympics didn't originate in Athens, the city-state played a vital role in Greek culture. Athens had its own major athletic festival called the Panathenaic Games, held every 4 years in honor of its patron goddess, Athena. The celebrations lasted 7 days, with the main event being a horse race held in the Ilissos River Valley. But even though the Panathenaic Games were important for Athens, they took second place to the Olympics. The reason for this is simple. Olympia was considered the most sacred site in Greece, and thus the Olympics were the most prestigious and famous of all the Greek festivals. This is also why every 5 years a council of elders from the different city-states met at the sanctuary of Zeus to settle any disputes and make sure the truce would be respected. Now that we know a little bit about how the Olympics began and why they were important, we can look at what actually happened at them. Like today's modern Olympics, the ancient Games were an athletic festival. This means they consisted of various competitions that tested speed, strength, endurance, and skill. Most of the events were centered around running, wrestling, javelin throwing, and discus throwing, but there were also chariot races and horse competitions. You may be wondering why women were not allowed to participate. The answer is simple. Since it was a religious festival in honor of Zeus, women were restricted from entering the sanctuary. Only female priestesses of Hera were exempt from this rule, but they could not compete either. Another interesting fact about the Olympics was that the participants were nude. This may seem strange to us now, but the Greeks didn't see it as anything out of the ordinary. Nudity was common in Greek art and culture, and besides, the Olympic Games were considered a religious festival, not a vulgar exhibition. If anything, the nudity was a way of showing the god a perfectly healthy body. One of the most famous events at the Olympics was the stayed race. This was a foot race that covered the length of the sanctuary, approximately 192 meters or 210 yards. According to legend, it got its name because it was the distance between the walls of the city of ancient Stada and the Altis Grove. Since the Olympics were in honor of Zeus, there was also a religious component to them. Every 4 years, a procession of men bearing olive branches and other offerings would make their way up the Altis hill to the temple of Zeus. Here, they would sacrifice animals and pray to the god. This ritual was known as the Theoria. In addition to honoring Zeus, the Theoria also served as a reminder of the sacred truce. As the procession made its way to the temple, a herald would announce to the crowd, "Let there be a halt to war and strife." It was a solemn and moving sight that brought the Greek world together in peace. When it comes to winning the Olympics, the prizes were pretty simple. The victors were awarded a wreath of wild olive branches. This was considered the highest honor a Greek athlete could receive, even more prestigious than gold. Besides this, there were no other prizes. Unlike the modern Olympics, where thousands of medals are awarded, the ancient Greeks kept track of who won each event, but no official medals were given out. Victors would often receive praise and glory from their fellow citizens and sometimes even be immortalized in works of art. But the truth is that most Olympic competitors were just happy to have participated in such a prestigious event. As the Olympics grew in popularity, other city-states began holding their own festivals in honor of various gods. This led to a proliferation of local games throughout Greece. The most famous of these were the Nemean Games, held in the Peloponnese, and the Isthmian Games held in Corinth. These games were still important and attracted a lot of participants, but the Olympics in Olympia remained the most prestigious of all. It wasn't until the Roman Empire that the Olympics began to lose their importance. As Christianity spread throughout the Mediterranean, pagan festivals such as the Olympics were seen as barbaric and uncivilized. In 394 AD, the Emperor Theodosius I officially abolished the Games. The last Olympic Games were held in 393 AD in honor of the emperor's father, Theodosius the Great. The ancient Olympics were an important part of Greek culture. They provided a time for the Greek world to come together in peace and celebrate their common heritage. Even though the Games were eventually abolished, their legacy lived on. The modern Olympic Games are based on the ancient festivals and strive to promote the same values of peace, understanding, and cooperation. If you liked this video, please hit that subscribe button below. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.